The objective of this film, Love in the Time of Feminism, is to unpack these various complicated concepts, things that go unsaid. These are things that get overlooked. These are things that we just don't want to dwell on because they make us uncomfortable. It's important to have these conversations because that will be the first step to actually trying to kind of break out of these systems. Yeah, start a conversation. That's the whole point of the film.
A very interesting question.
I don't know. I really don't know. I know it's something I would want if I were to get married.
The concept of marriage is also evolving as fast as the concept of feminism and equality.
Basically, you end up as equal partners when you enter a space.
When you're dividing ghar ke kaam, there is equal distribution, and it's not happening because he's a man or I'm a woman.
You split bills, split savings, give each other time, a lot of conversations. But at the same time, also making space if someone wants to do a bit more of one thing and the other person is good at the other thing. So to find that balance.
I wouldn't say that everyone should do everything. It's more about like respect for each other, respect for each other's careers, respect for each other's prior families.
When some people think equality, maybe they think of let's share the chores like 50-50, let's pitch in financially 50-50. I feel like that's a little bit reductive. The phrase that I would use is differentiated but equal responsibilities. In any partnership, I think between two people, putting like the ideas of the imposed gender roles aside, I think it's important that each person contribute the way that they are best able to.
The modern day concept of marriage requires both partners to have much more communication that we have seen of our parents or from our grandparents.
I'm a practicing Hindu, right? Hindu wedding traditions are very, very patriarchal in nature and are very, very oppressive in nature. If the marriage begins with those oppressive and skewed wedding traditions, can you ever call it a marriage of equals?
I don't think even we are ready for marriage for equals because इतना सब कुछ ingrained है, like इतने सारे gender roles ingrained हैं.
When there is a push for a more equal marriage, there is also going to be a certain amount of friction because during the teething stage of any relationship, no two people are in sync.
I'll be very honest, we are not there yet. There are multiple flaws that we have as a society. But yes, I hope at least our generation, at least the privileged ones like us, do understand this and हम लोग कुछ तो कर पाएं.
But if I were to get married, I guess I would want a marriage of equals. I just don't know what it would look like. If anybody knows, please tell me.
I hope I get into a marriage of equals, or there's no point actually.
Toxic masculinity comes up in spaces where people want to direct spaces. They just enter a room and they know everything. They know what's the best for everyone.
Toxic masculinity is, I think, a word we use all the time because we see it around us all the time.
The masculine person is supposed to be strong, the masculine person is stoic, the masculine person doesn't complain or doesn't feel hurt or doesn't cry.
We keep talking about feminism in the sense that we talk about equal gender rights and things like that. What we do forget a lot of times is even the men have been told because of the society that they have to be strong, they don't have to cry, they have to stand out in the room, they cannot be weak and things like that.
If you look at a patriarchal setup where say men have a lot of the privilege and women do not, it also comes with its own baggage of emotions which go unresolved or unchecked in that entire setup. Even something which can be easily addressed by opening lines of communication because you have unresolved emotions in play, you will take that out differently in life.
It can take the form of bullying, it can take the form of just aggression not just in action, but also in terms of how you're talking to another person.
The root of toxic masculinity is a fragile ego, but it becomes toxic when it is rooted in ownership. The displays of masculinity come from a place of like aggression, possessiveness.
I feel that when there is a certain display of power, वो physical भी हो सकता है, वो mental भी हो सकता है, and वो उसका कोई और form भी हो सकता है.
Anything that comes with a should and masculinity, I think that's where the toxicity starts pervading. And then you're also punished in a small way by society for not being able to actually follow those standards.
I think toxic masculinity is itself an offshoot of a lot of gender-based problems that we have in our society.
I think I internalized many aspects of like toxic femininity earlier on. You tend to be over-nurturing at your own expense. You tend to be self-sacrificing in order to be seen as good and righteous.
Even like the favors that we were told, the stories that we were told, or the feminine character is supposed to be the prettier one, the quieter one, doesn't speak up. These are toxic ideas of how femininity has to be followed.
It is once again an offshoot of having misplaced expectations from one gender. The misplaced expectations can come from the opposite gender, or it can be from your own peers within the same gender itself.
When women are not supportive of each other, I don't know, probably slut shaming other women is toxic femininity. Saying that I cannot do this because I'm a woman might be toxic femininity.
To lose your identity in a patriarchal system while you think that everything around you have to nurture, and it's your responsibility to get yourself trapped there.
I hate to even say it, but actually playing the victim card sometimes, that might be toxic femininity.
In terms of toxic femininity, of course, is a space which is exploited by some people. My big issue with that is that if we're talking about marital rape, they're like, oh, so many people file fake cases about marital rape or about domestic violence.
I'm not really sure वो कितनी बार होता है, but yeah, of course, we cannot just decline कि नहीं ऐसा कुछ होता ही नहीं है.
The facts are that even if there are people filing fake cases, the majority of people suffering at the hands of cisgender males is very, very high, and you cannot ignore that based on the fact that a few people have maybe misused the law.
Traditionally, because women were not afforded roles of authority and power, their manner of acquiring some kind of power and control over others had to do with a more emotionally manipulative strategy.
Toxic femininity is not at all a reason or an excuse for toxic masculinity to exist. Both in their own spaces are incorrect, but one doesn't give the other a valid reason to exist or a justification to exist.
If we talk about positive masculinity, I think the first big step that any man or any boy can be taught is that it's okay to admit you're wrong, it's okay to admit that you need help, and it's okay to say that even though there's a defined expectation of me, I am not good to meet it or prepared to meet it at this point of time.
Positive masculinity will be any man being comfortable while crying, even being expressive while talking about his emotions.
A masculinity that is secure is just a wonderful thing. It can be compassionate, it can be loving, it can be nurturing just as much as femininity. In a traditional sense, men protect, they provide. Those are positive things.
Well, anyone can be strong. I think just being able to protect someone.
For the longest time, we keep having that joke ki please batana mat ki main roya tha. That needs to stop. I mean, they are as humans as we are, and we need to make everyone cry and let everyone cry, no matter what their gender is.
I do feel like in the media, a lot of the representation glorifies the bad boys. A lot of men will idolize, something that is so clearly problematic, Kabir Singh. We like, men who are not afraid to be emotional, allowing men the space and also reinforcing that none of this makes them any less masculine, that this is worth celebrating. That's what I think needs to be done.
I think that just opens the door for more healthy communication and a quick resolution to an issue which might otherwise fester for a very long period of time.
In terms of positive masculinity, I mean, I do understand it exists as a concept, but my point is that so many times we treat the bare minimum normal as something that should be applauded. Just because toxic masculinity exists, there is a space for something which is an antithesis of it to exist. But I think it's the bare minimum that, a person should exhibit.
As long as an individual is able to choose a role for herself, keeping away the burden of gender expectations, I think that is an example.
Positive femininity to me is so much about really just embracing who you are outside of the narrow construct that you have been given. Bravery, strength, courage, these are all feminine traits. They are positive feminine traits. We should embrace every shade of femininity and womanhood.
Some women may choose to work well into their late 20s, early 30s, and for as long as they wish. And some women may choose to opt for a different role. One needs to look at it from the point of view is whether the choice is based on their own individual decision, it is informed. And as long as there is no expectation to perform a certain role just because you're meant to further an image for the particular gender as such, I think that is when it starts getting toxic.
Empathy, that is one feminine character that should be picked up by both men and women and all genders, because that's how any sane and good human being would be, who understands and empathizes and feels for other people.
Femininity shouldn't only be seen as this vulnerable, fragile mother figure who is all forgiving and all loving.
Mostly it's about questioning why these notions were picked up long ago and why they are still followed. I think it's about questioning everything.
There's nothing masculine about a woman who is assertive and likes to take initiative. That is also a feminine trait. There's nothing necessarily less masculine about a man who likes to paint and cry and express himself. A lot of attributes that we associate with masculinity and femininity are just honestly universal.
That would be Randall and Beth from This Is Us.
I don't know. I can't even think of one.
I think there are two, and again, I think I evolved in that sense. Chandler and Monica. It started from that. Now, in the recent times, I think I really liked Jake and Amy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Absolutely amazing equal partnership.
This is actually really hard.
There's this show on Netflix called Sex Education, in which there are two characters, Otis and Ruby.
बहुत cheesy है, but I think Jack and Rebecca in This Is Us, I think definitely.
Oh, but right, Schitt's Creek. I think both the couples represented showed some healthy traits.
A lot of highs and lows in the relationship, but an ability to reconcile at the same time being honest about how it made them feel, holding space for that, and still not losing the enthusiasm to maybe wake up next to each other.
Right from the fact where Monica tries to be the one who's proposing. At that point of time, I could not understand कि मुझे इतना पसंद क्यों आ रहा है, but I really appreciated it. Now, in the recent times, I think I really liked Jake and Amy. And of course, ऐसा होता है ना कि जैसे जैसे हम लोग evolve हो रहे हैं, वो writing में भी दिखता है shows में. Of course, Amy is a strong feminist and Jake completely supports it. I mean, you would want to see these partnerships.
Otis and Ruby share a brief relationship, and I just feel that during the course of that relationship, both were so perfect for each other because that's what they needed from their partners at that stage in their life. At the end of the relationship, they were intelligent enough to address that they might have been at different places. They do not play footloose around heartbreak. It's just that they treat each aspect of the relationship with a lot of respect.
I mean, it's not a fictional couple, but I stand Deepika and Ranveer, Deepveer forever. They just seem like they support each other so much.
David and Patrick did show healthy traits as a couple, as well as Alexis and Ted. I think they showed one healthy trait towards the end, which was like just knowing when to end it. So I think that was a great learning point for me.
I think there's a lot of love, a lot of understanding, a lot of frustrations with like 3 kids. I think a good relationship stands on the foundations of conversation and understanding and compassion. Still, fingers crossed for the last season. Yeah.
The whole process of creating this video was such a learning experience for me and for everybody kind of involved in the video. The impact that I was trying to have with this video kind of started in the process itself. They did their own research so that, you know, they know what they're talking about, and maybe tomorrow you're able to be comfortable discussing this with your partner, with your friends, with your family. I've had this idea for about 3 years, and I just never really was able to understand how to put it into action, but here we are 3 years later and it's happened. A big thank you to everybody who took out their special time and sat down to record the answers, and I'm so excited.